eccentrics are the future of exercise, and they always will be. It is an important differentiator that we can bring to the medics operators that will put them above all existing gym outlets out there now to have something that no one else has.
Obviously, it's been a while since we spoke, and you have some interesting developments and updates as it relates to the NeGator, fifth generation.
We realized that we needed to reduce the cost in order to make it more practical for the user. So our machine is integrated into the medic unit, and it senses your motion. And as you go to lift the 300 pounds, it will help you with, say, 50 pounds of help. So it's only 250 pounds, and it'll help you raise that up. And then it'll sense when you reach the top and release it, and you lower the 300. So we get the extra weight by making the weight lighter for you, which is a much safer and efficient way to do that.
Hey, it's Lawrence here with highintensitybusiness.com, your one-stop shop for growing your HIIT business and fueling your passion for high-intensity training. Today, I'm joined by Dr. Michael MacMillan, who is a retired orthopedic surgeon and former associate professor from the University of Florida, and he now resides in St. Petersburg, Florida as well. He's renowned for his work in spinal surgery and research, particularly focusing on the medical applications of resistance exercise, with a special emphasis on eccentric muscle force during his tenure with medics at the Center for Exercise Science. Dr. MacMillan has also featured on the podcast twice before, and I highly encourage you, after you listen to this, to go and check out episode 444 and 453, which you can find on any podcast platform, but also on the website, highintensitybusiness.com. As we go through, we spend both those two podcasts really getting into, again, Dr. MacMillan's research and his technology, and also just we talk about eccentrics in depth, and we answer every question imaginable regarding eccentrics. So I encourage you to do that after this. Mike, great to see you again. Thank you for making the time.
Lawrence, it's a great opportunity. Appreciate it.
You're very welcome. So obviously, it's been a while since we spoke, and you have some interesting developments and updates as it relates to the NeGator, fifth generation. So
yeah, fifth generation.
Tell us what's new.
Well, you were nice enough to have me on the podcast. I think it came out last in January, and we had a fair amount of interest from that. So I had a number of discussions with medics owners around the country, particularly Jim Clary up in New York. I give him a shout out. So although our system worked well, we realized that we needed to reduce the cost in order to make it more practical for the user. So beginning around February, March, we made a concerted effort to look at our manufacturing process and found some very valuable points to reduce the cost in it. So we've resourced the motor. We have done unitized construction of the drivetrain, and we are now working on bringing that out, hopefully to show it at Luke Carlson's conference in this coming November.
Great, exciting times. I remember actually talking to Jim Clary about eccentrics. He's very passionate about eccentrics. Can you share your maybe some of the discussions you've had, or how he feels about it?
Well, Jim's all in on eccentrics, but he is the eccentric machine, and he's a very fit individual. But my running clients through workouts every day is physically difficult, even without eccentrics. And when you do eccentrics where you're actually adding the extra weight to the client, it gets very fatiguing after a while. So,
is that what he's doing currently?
I think he is, but
amazing. Yeah. That's tough work. Yeah.
So, but the situation, the reason for all this work in this area is that, one thing I've said before, and I shouldn't say now, but I'll say now anyway. I've said eccentrics are the future of exercise, and they always will be. That's just because they've been working on it for so long. But it is an important differentiator that we can bring to the medics operators that will put them above all existing gym outlets out there now to have something that no one else has. So,
Yeah, and just on that, can you just remind us about? So let's assume this might be the first time someone's listening to you and learning about this technology for the first time. So just a couple of questions on the basics. Remind us what machines or equipment this can be attached to or work with.
well, it's medics equipment is very amenable to attachment from this. Just sit it on top, attach it to the weight stack, and you have a eccentric capable machine. And I had a short discussion with Jeff Turner and went to Clay Steppe's place in High Springs, made some measurements. I haven't tested it yet, but we have endeavored to make it compatible with Imagine Strength machines as well. Now, in addition to that, we made another advancement here. We've improved our free weight attachment as well, which basically is a self supporting stand that goes above, say, a bench press. And you can do free weights with that. And then we've always had the ability to do squats with placing the unit on a power rack.
Excellent.
Just one final thing, we're looking at other selectorized equipment. And so using that same stand that we use for bench press, we can, if a selectorized equipment has a cable hole in the top where the cable goes through the frame, we can do selectorized equipment as well.
So like, because there was questions, wasn't there, inside the community about Nautilus and other machines like that. Could you see it working with those types of machines?
Yes, there's a million ways to be able to hook up to it, but it's simplest if it's a situation where the cable goes down to the weight stack, and that's a very simple cable attachment for us to make it eccentric capable.
Cool. And just to add some color, actually, one other question about equipment. What about plate loaded machines? Does that work with those?
Yeah, it's not designed for that. That would not be our primary primary focus. There's some physical things too. They move in a lever. So as the lever changes the direction with the cable, there's some. So I wouldn't want to do that primarily. I'd want to look at that so we had a better result from plate loaded machines.
Yeah, it makes sense. So and again, you've got some great videos on the website, which is maxneg.com. If people want to see the technology in action, it's much easier, I think, for a lot of people to see it visually. But just to really, I guess, set the scene here, for those who have no idea what we're talking about, let's just could you just give a basic summary of what your views about eccentrics and what the technology does to enhance the workout stimulus?
So views about eccentrics, it's hard to summarize, but we have a hidden ability. When I say hidden, when you do eccentric strength, you don't do it voluntarily. It's an involuntary, automatic molecular action that occurs. Like if you jump off a wall, you don't think, I'm going to engage my eccentric capabilities to withstand my fall. It happens automatically. So it's so this molecular system allows the muscle to withstand very high forces. It turns out that this high force is the critical ingredient for muscle growth and hypertrophy. It's mechanical force, mechanical transduction is pretty much widely considered the stimulus for muscle growth. We deliver a significantly higher level of mechanical transduction. How we do it, the thing we stumbled across that makes this possible is we don't make the weight heavier. We make the weight lighter. So you go to your medics machine and you put on 300 pounds and say that's your maximum. You can barely do that once. But our machine is integrated into the medic unit, and it senses your motion. And as you go to lift the 300 pounds, it will help you with, say, 50 pounds of help. So it's only 250 pounds, and it'll help you raise that up. And then it'll sense when you reach the top and release it, and you lower the 300. So we get the extra weight by making the weight lighter for you, which is a much safer and efficient way to do that.
Great stuff. And let's just talk more about, can you talk more about just the benefits of the enhanced eccentric? So previous podcast, you talked about, how the importance of this therapeutic window where you're having a super maximal eccentric load. And talk about why that's important, what's happening, how does that manifest in terms of adaptations?
Well, there's very little reason for a bone, a tendon, a muscle to grow beyond its original genetic size unless it's exposed to an overload. And the overload term is really way overused now. Overload is exactly what it says. It's a load beyond what the structure is designed to handle. So the Buddhist condensation of that is, how do you lower the weight you cannot lift? And this extra, when you do normal weightlifting, you affect the balance of protein synthesis, anabolism, catabolism, and it goes towards the production of proteins and myofilaments, and you don't break down your muscle. When you go to overload, you get that process in spades, but you also have the ability to add extra muscular tissue because the strain, it really is, there's an actual strain in the muscles themselves, slight separations of the fibers that stimulate a very robust repair and regeneration process, and you can actually add muscular tissue. So we're not accessing this in a safe manner right now. And the safe manner is basically this: to bring progressive resistance exercise, which we're all very much aware of, but to bring it to the eccentric side. And that makes these valuable physiologic benefits safe and effective.
Got it. Can you remind us about so you kind of hinted there about the potential for greater muscle hypertrophy. But the thing you talked about quite a lot on the previous podcast is the structural adaptations as well, in terms of maybe better adaptations in bone and ligaments and tissues and that kind of thing. Can you elaborate on that? Is that because there is more in that potentially versus just the concentric phase of
the mechanical signal is the level of it that's required is higher for the tendons, the ligaments, and the bones than it is for the muscle. So if you're just doing concentric exercises and you have a normal amount of bone in your skeleton and normal tendon strength, you're not going to get much stimulus for that bone to grow. It basically, there is a relationship between bone density and muscle mass. And so you need a higher signal intensity to signal bone growth. And that's where negatives come in. When you're doing an eccentric contraction, when the muscle is being pulled by an external force and it's a higher level than the muscle can generate, that signal goes through the tendon to the bone, and those tissues then can benefit from it.
I'm really intrigued now what you were saying about Jim. And I know you can't speak for him. I spoke to him recently and he did mention about his passion for eccentrics. Has he reported getting much better? Because you and I debated quite a lot in the previous podcast about, how much difference does this make in terms of adaptations? Like, what's the evidence? And obviously we don't really have the controlled research to show that at this stage. But I'm just curious if just anecdotally, you've heard from Jim or others, maybe that's a better way of putting this, who have been experimenting with either your technology or just manual enhanced eccentrics or other, who have seen better results?
Well, there's, obviously a host of articles and literature over the years showing eccentrics are better for hypertrophy and strength. And unfortunately, there's not one consistent technology that everyone uses. So,
well, definition for eccentrics, what that means, right? Because it could be just a negative phase of the repetition without it being super maximal, right?
By definition, when a maximally contracting muscle, a muscle that's being stimulated to contract, is forced to lengthen, that's an eccentric contraction. So, we move our arms in and out all the time, our muscles lengthen and shorten, but those are not eccentric contractions.
I see.
You have to be consciously trying to shorten the muscle, but the external load is causing it to strengthen. So I can't speak for Jim or what his results are. I think there's been a very recent interesting paper recently that I stumbled across when I was writing that monograph by James Steele, where he looked at years of data with high intensity programs. Are you familiar with that paper?
Is this the Fit 20 one, was it?
Yes.
Yeah.
And I'm sure everybody came away with a different point, but the point that resonated with me is that, and the HIIT community is under fire now. There's a whole host of podcasters and exercise science researchers that are promoting a high volume technique.
I must live in my own little bubble, Mike. I don't see this. Is this pushing back on Mike Mentzer's? The researchers of Mike Mentzer.
They have attacked the Colorado study, which is really difficult,
problematic
to defend. But
right, exactly.
But so anyway.
But they're straw manning high intensity training by doing that. But sorry, I'm taking off.
James Steele pointed out that certainly by about 12 weeks and certainly by a year, the high intensity workouts that he cataloged and had privy to plateaued. And people point to that. Well, how do you break through the plateau? And one of the suggestions was volume. And then that really, is kind of, it goes against the high intensity practice. So I think that for a Jim Clary type situation, if you have patients that plateau, number one, people don't like it when they don't make advancements, and there's a tendency to lose membership when things are the same time after time. I may be speaking to the choir here. I'm not sure.
No, it's a great point. Yeah,
but and that's where I feel philosophically eccentrics really can shine. If you're making advancements with standard exercise and improving your athletic ability or your body composition, you don't need eccentrics. You're going from to what your goals are. But if you've plateaued and you're not where you want to be, you have to do something a little bit different. And this is where eccentrics would come in and allow people to make further advancements beyond what concentric only workouts can do.
And when you say further advancements, we're referring to potentially more structural improvement, more muscle mass, more strength?
Yes, as evidenced by breaking through the plateau and increasing the weights that you're doing.
Yeah.
Plus, I'll just say there's some advantages to eccentrics. Number one, eccentrics don't require energy, because the energy that's being pulled by the outside weight. So you're not breathing hard, your heart rate's not going up, your blood pressure's not going up. So you get the benefit of this extra mechanical force with little effort. So it's a better way to address that problem, and works well with seniors. as well. They can do more work with less effort.
This was an interesting point, and you expanded on this in your paper you sent me about about less cardiovascular strain. And it got me thinking about a few things. So what I find not so compelling about that is from a risk point of view. I don't think that high intensity training poses much in the way of cardiovascular risk. I think we've proven that out. When I talk about just standard, concentric, eccentric, and with a high degree of effort and striving towards muscle failure, even in a senior population, it would seem based on, I guess, way I understand it is it has the individual has to have a cardiovascular condition that is quite rare in order to be a really high risk situation. But I mean, Karim, feel free to challenge me on that. But I'm speaking really broadly when I say that. But what I did find interesting is it lends itself to being more attractive to a senior population who don't like necessarily especially in the beginning when it's new, the novel challenge to the cardiovascular system. So from an adherence point of view and just getting people started, I thought that was quite good. That's where I felt that lesser cardiovascular strain perhaps had more utility. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Well, obviously, well, I'm going to answer you with a different point. The interesting thing about it, having done, I actually owned a gym with these machines once in generation 2, and we used to call it the NeGator smile, because from the perception of the client in the machine, it is such an unusual event to raise a weight and then have the weight change the amount in your hands and have to lower it back down. So that novel experience, which actually, is something that causes great changes in the muscle as well, is really what is attractive to the clients.
It's just a feeling.
It is the experience. Every time you've raised a weight, you've lowered the same weight. But when you raise it up and suddenly the weight changes to heavier weight and the weight's pulling you, you're not used to the weight pulling you. You're pulling the weight and then you let it down, but you pull the weight up and the weight pulls you down. That's the different experience.
Let's go.
Today's episode is sponsored by Imagine Strength, the game changer in safe, simple, and effective high-intensity training machines. When it comes to HIIT, Imagine Strength is your go-to for intelligently designed, efficient, and affordable equipment. Their team is passionate about HIIT, and it shows in every piece they craft. So why are Imagine Strength the right choice? Number 1, they tailor-make their equipment for HIIT studios. Number 2, they provide cost-effective solutions for your business. And number 3, they are committed to ongoing innovation and refinement. Ready to take your HIIT business to the next level? Visit imaginestrength.com to discuss your needs and find the perfect gear for your studio. Join the HIIT revolution of Imagine Strength and transform your workout experience today.
Let's go.
Now I'm thinking about it as you're saying that. I'm thinking actually my experiences where I've done more negative work, whether it's advanced techniques, negative only after failure, it's horrendous. It's actually really uncomfortable, albeit without that cardiovascular strain as much as we just mentioned. But I'm probably contradicting my last point by saying actually that discomfort probably makes it just as challenging. So when you say the NeGator smile, if I'm getting that right, is it because of the surprise they get, right? But it's still challenging at the end of the day. Yeah.
Yes. Now, so the 3 main proponents of HIIT techniques, Arthur Jones, Mike Mentzer, and Dorian Yates, one set workouts, all used negatives, as you suggested, at the end of the set as like a finisher in order to, get as much juice out of the muscle as possible. So, any final reps, negative or concentric, are going to be a more difficult experience than the beginning reps. So, but in the beginning reps where you're just laying the weight down, especially if you control the amount, we are able to start your negative weight below max, so you're used to it, and then gradually increase it to where it's above max. And at 10 to 20% above max, it's not a significant effort to lower that weight down.
Yeah. And you talked about this before, and obviously the previous podcast, you mentioned a therapeutic window. And one thing I think, hopefully we've given a good background on the technology. Obviously, the audience can learn more if they go to maxnegator.com as well, contact you. And we'll get back to some questions about the technology in a moment. But whilst we're on this topic, you mentioned a therapeutic window in the last couple of podcasts about, progressive overload in terms of the enhanced eccentrics is really important. You felt that, and correct me if I'm wrong in how I say this, but the way I understand it is you felt that if one exceeds the load or time under load for them, whatever that means, I guess going outside that therapeutic window, there could be negative consequences. And what I don't fully understand is what kind of negative consequences, because you mentioned about deformation of bone and you used the coat hanger metaphor. Maybe you could use the same to help the audience and myself understand. But I'm just curious because I don't have access to technology right now.
Sure.
And I currently exercise in a gym that does not have equipment that I really like. But I would like to experiment more with negative techniques. But I want to be mindful of, going beyond the minimum effective dose. I know it might not even be possible without this technology. So long way of me saying, if you go outside that therapeutic window with or without your technology, maybe your technology stops that from happening. What negative consequences can occur?
So the therapeutic window starts at your 1 rep max because that's the overload. Again, overload is a very strong signal for structural adaptation. The eccentric molecules that engage in the muscle to withstand this overload because at that point, the muscle is no longer shortening. The muscle is lengthening. So these molecules try to prevent the lengthening. They're trying to keep the muscle from being pulled apart. At 10% above your max, at 20% above your max, 30%, 40% above your max, the molecules do a very good job to the point. It's just a very slow lengthening that occurs at that point. At 50% above, you risk actual macro damage to the muscle. So that's the therapeutic window. 1 rep max, that's where the overload stimulus gets engaged. You get physiologic response, but obviously if you get to 80%, if you try to do eccentric movements with 80% over your 1 rep max, you might not enjoy what happens. You could do macro damage. So that's why it's critical to do progressive resistance exercise with eccentrics. That when somebody successfully lowers their 1 rep max 10 times, add 5-10% of the weight and do the next set. And you can do that safely.
What is macro damage?
Macro damage is structural muscle tear. Where not only that the little actin myosins come apart, but you start, it's a muscle strain.
Oh, wait, see, so micro damage would be like the actin myosin stress that you felt. And macro would be like the muscle belly and the rest of it.
Yeah.
I'm being really, listic. Also, you could like tear a muscle, cause an injury, that kind of thing.
Absolutely. And that's all muscle injuries are eccentric. People
really?
Yeah. When you run a 100-yard dash and your hamstring pops, that's an eccentric because your low leg is accelerating so rapidly that the hamstring has to stop it. It's pulled apart.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
Everybody tears muscles on, in bench press when they're lowering the weight, not when they're raising it. So,
Yeah.
and it makes sense. I mean, if you're going to damage a muscle, you can't push the muscle together to hurt it. You have to pull it. And that's where the eccentrics kick in.
Just a side quest for a moment here. I've seen some pretty awful, so many of us have, videos of people tearing muscles online. And I sometimes watch that and I think, I don't want that to happen to me. How do I avoid that? And maybe the fact that I practice safe high intensity training and I manage volume and frequency quite well means that I'm mitigating that from happening. Why does that happen to people? Is it just simply because they're using so much volume, or they're using heavy negatives? And or both?
Virtually in free weights, it happens at maximum attempts. Also,
okay,
when you're doing an exercise where momentum's involved, obviously. Okay. So when you take the bench and you try to bounce it off the bottom, that spring-like thing. So it's if you're not controlling the amount of resistance and the momentum of the resistance, and you try to work at near maximal levels, that's where you're going to run into macro damage.
Okay. And you've got a powerlifting background, an impressive one. Have you ever had any? Yeah, have you? How did that feel?
That was horrible.
Was it?
Luckily, it was 370. Luckily, I had good spotters there. And, but my whole chest and arm turned blue. And this was 1972 or something. I went to 2 doctors. I was in college then. They didn't, they said I tore my bicep.
Oh my God.
I knew it. My bicep's fine. But I went to a specialist. Oh, you tore your bicep. So anyway, I gave up on medicine then.
Oh, that's so funny. Okay. All right. So yeah, I have a better understanding now. I appreciate that. So just, I guess, getting back to the NeGator and just making sure that we're being comprehensive here. Can you just update the listeners on pricing information? I know you're doing some work on that as well. And then also just like, how does it work in terms of install and delivery and all these sorts of things?
So right now, I'm going to tell you what our projections are.
Yeah.
So we have all the components to assemble it with in the manufacturing plant. I don't know if you're aware, but we've had some weather delays here in St. Petersburg.
Yes. Very much so.
So they're unpacking their manufacturing place now. And I talked to the programmer yesterday. And so when we come out, we need to have the lowest possible price point. And that will be based on the cost of materials, the manufacturing costs, and the number of units sold. But we're looking at somewhere between $3,000 and $3,500 per unit. Mm-hmm. I will be talking to the people that we first use this with. I will personally go there. We'll go through training and things like that. And the way we anticipate is that if you have a line of medics, you put this on one of your machines, it's attract a lot of attention with your clients. And if the buzz is as significant as we anticipate and you order another one, then you'll receive one in a Pelican case that we'll send to you. The attachment method is going to be, we just put it on top. They have these stainless steel tie wraps. You've seen the plastic tie wraps?
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, they make them out of stainless steel, and we can just attach it to the top of the machine with those. It's got 390 pounds of tension, so it's a very solid way of doing that. And then just attach it to the weight stack through a simple mechanism, and you're good to go.
Okay, so the buyer can install it themselves with not a lot of hassle.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. And all our units operate wirelessly. So just get the Wi-Fi address, put it on your phone, and it comes up with the screen where you enter the amount of weight that you put on the machine,
Right.
and it will give you 25% of help to raise that weight. And that's program number one. There are several programs that you can do. We have a program for where you can do different levels of help. We have a program where we have drop sets. So it'll go where you'll be doing 4 reps with 25% of help. And then as you get tired, be 33% of help and then 50% of help. We have that program as well.
That's super cool because that enables you to do, if you want to do more volume, and you want to be able to do more volume with drop sets, but you want the weight to be dropped by a certain. That has more utility than just accentuating the negative or enhancing the negative, I feel.
Alone. Yeah, that you start into muscle endurance as well.
Right.
I'll quickly refer back to the backstory. We have for several years been doing a type of isometrics. This is new stuff now. Okay, as your listeners, there's a group in Australia. I think his name is Ostranka, doing nothing but isometrics for his athletes, and we found that for full disclosure, I was a spine surgeon, but so we found that it's extremely important to train the lumbar spine safely, and the lumbar spine is not in a safe position when it's flexed forward. If it's hyperextended, that's okay, but the neutral position is the safest position. In fact, if you look at someone doing deadlifts, if you look at their back and they pick up a very heavy weight, their lumbar spine doesn't move. They lock their lumbar spine, the pelvis rotates back and they hold it up. The lumbar spine handles heavy loads by doing an isometric contraction. The piece of information that people really didn't fail to realize is that the weight that the lumbar spine is under exceeds its concentric ability. It can't, if you're deadlifting 600 pounds, the lumbar spine cannot deadlift 600 pounds, but it can withstand that hold because it's doing a isometric eccentric, and it's actually called quasi isometric eccentric because there's a little creep in there. I would encourage your listeners to look up quasi isometrics. There's a lot of literature on that, but the benefit to the MedX owner is that you can train virtually any patient with back problems by simply assisting them into the upright posture on the lumbar extension machine, and then having them hold that for 30 seconds. Mm-hmm. And then they gradually get tired, and then you hold them down. And then you can increase the weight, but maintain that, because the primary function of the lumbar muscles in a situation of effort is to hold the lumbar spine in lordosis and prevent injury. And it does that isometrically and eccentrically.
Mm-hmm.
I'm sure the head's exploding all over right now.
No, I get it. It makes a lot of sense. And obviously we've got a great document you've put together called The Backstory.
Yes.
Great title. A new strategy for the aging lumbar spine, which we'll add to the blog post episode. Oh God, what episode is it? Just give me a second here. Yeah, it is episode 490 over at highintensitybusiness.com. Yeah. Where you provide more information on obviously how the spine works, and you talk about everything you just said there in a little bit more detail. But what was the significance in the group in Australia? Sorry, I missed that.
Well, it's not, people think isometrics just is this one thing where you push against something. they came up with a concept called yielding isometrics. So you
I
can
see.
take if you take a sub maximal weight, if you can curl 100 pounds, you can take 70 pounds and hold it there. But at a certain point, you're going to start yielding and the muscle lengthens. And that's just another variation of eccentrics. Now, bicep muscles are not uniquely eccentric, but it works real well for the lumbar muscles, which are uniquely eccentric. And probably the hamstrings as well. That's probably the Nordic hamstring exercises people do, where their body leans forward, is a form of yielding isometrics as well.
Okay. And so in relation to the lumbar extension machine, so using yielding isometrics there, you talk about this in the document about how it's a great way to track training because you can obviously measure the time under load in the isometric position. What's your general protocol that you recommend there? Is it someone goes to isometric failure and then obviously then they just yield? Yeah.
Go through, make sure they do a range of motion in the machine, find a comfortable weight that's about 5 to 6 perceived effort and start there. 30 seconds seems to be about the magic time. 10 seconds is too short. You have to have a heavier weight, and 60 seconds seems like an eternity. So about 30 seconds of holding it there and then gradually letting it down, and then increasing the weight appropriately. You can do that without, I shouldn't say this, you can do this without a NeGator. We have that program in a machine, and what it does, it helps the client raise the machine up, gives them the full weight, and then in 30 seconds, it lightens the weight so they can put it down.
Right. It's one of the protocols in the program.
Yeah.
Got it. Okay. Very interesting, Mike. We're at time. It just flies by, doesn't it? And we didn't really get into the document, but we will share it with the audience.
You've linked it. So that's probably, we would never have enough time to go through that thing.
Yeah. There is one last thing, and maybe we'll go over by a minute or two if you can. Can you go over by a couple of minutes?
Yeah, sure.
I had one of the questions in a community about, and it was just James asking, would love to hear us talk more about eccentrics being resistant to fatigue. Can you expand on that a bit more?
It's all about thermodynamics. So the critical thing with eccentrics is that you are not pushing the weight; the weight's pushing you. So the energy for raising a weight comes from burning ATP and calcium and glucose in your muscle, and that chemical energy turns into mechanical energy when you raise a weight up. But when you're holding a heavy weight in your hands, that weight has potential energy, and that weight goes through your hands into the muscle, and it is resolved into elastic energy. In other words, so you're not burning any calories. You never lose weight. I shouldn't say this. You'll never lose weight doing eccentrics because you're not burning any calories.
You don't lose much doing concentrics either, though.
Yeah, actually, truth be known. And so again, when you start with a relatively lightweight, it's would you rather walk up 20 flights of stairs or walk down 20 flights of stairs? It's just there's just much easier to lower the weight than to raise it. And then we're just making the lowering a little bit harder by increasing the weight and getting the mechanical effect that we need for the muscle to grow.
Yeah. Okay. Well said. Mike, thank you so much for your time. And I'm sure we will do more in the future as things develop. Anything else you want to say, parting words regarding the technology, or anything else you want to share before we wrap up?
Well, for anybody that's going to the REC conference, it's actually REC.
It's not REC. It's Strength Forum, I think.
Oh, Strength Forum. I know it's REC. Okay. You stop me there. Let me know any questions or anything like that. And hopefully Jim Flanagan would allow me to hook up my device to one of his machines so you can experience it.
Yeah. I actually just realized after you said that this is probably going to get published It might be just before. I'm not quite sure. If it is just before, let's assume it is just before the strength forum. So if it is, then it's worth saying this, that it's November 15th and 16th in Orlando. And if you're interested in attending, you can contact Luke at discoverstrength.com. Luke is CEO and founder of Discover Strength, very successful high-intensity training business. They used to put on REC, which was Resistance Exercise Conference. And this is kind of like a more intimate continuation of that. It's the way I understand it. And if this podcast is out too late, then at the very least, you can at least demonstrate or send your interest in the strength forum, the second strength forum, perhaps next year if there is another one. So I have no idea what Luke's plans are, but we'll see. So there you go. Mike, thank you so much again. Again, for everyone that's interested in obviously learning more about the NeGator and connecting with Mike, please go to maxneg.com, maxneg.com. And this is Lawrence with High Intensity Business. Thank you, Mike, for your time.
Thank you, Lawrence, very much.
And thank you, everyone, for listening, and we'll talk soon.
Let's go.
This episode is brought to you by Imagine Strength, your go-to for safe, simple, and effective high-intensity training equipment. Growing a successful high-intensity training business requires workout equipment that's not only high quality, but also intelligently designed to fit the unique needs of your studio. And that's where Imagine Strength comes in. Drawing on the wisdom of the legendary Arthur Jones, Imagine Strength has crafted a groundbreaking line of fitness equipment that's as affordable as it is efficient, giving your studio the upgrade it needs without breaking the bank. The team at Imagine Strength breathes HIIT. Their passion for high-intensity training shines through in their designs, which they've consistently refined and innovated for optimum effectiveness and user experience. From my personal experience at REC, I can attest to the careful consideration and craftsmanship that goes into every single piece. My Imagine Strength workout was absolutely brutal, in a good way, of course. Now, what makes Imagine Strength truly stand out? They have innovative equipment tailored for the unique needs of HIIT studios, affordable and efficient designs, lowering the barriers to entry for a HIIT business, continuous innovation and refinement ensuring your studio stays ahead of the curve. Founder Jeff Turner and his team are dedicated to moving the HIIT industry forward and making strength training accessible to more people than ever before. Here's how you get started. Number 1, visit imaginestrength.com. Number 2, discuss your specific needs with the team. And number 3, select the equipment that will propel your business to the next level. Head to imaginestrength.com today and give your HIIT business the Imagine Strength edge. Be part of the HIIT revolution and see firsthand how their unique equipment can transform your studio's workout experience. Elevate your HIIT business with Imagine Strength.
Let's go.